Hey everyone, it's Miss Queen Crypto and I am back again on the Embily channel, and today I'm really excited for this episode of Block Talk because I'm going to be doing the A through Z, the ABCs of Bitcoin. So there were some letters that are kind of a reach, and I think you can kind of guess which ones. Some of them it was difficult to pick which one because there are so many words that start with that letter, but don't worry, I narrowed it down. I've got a list, all 26 letters. So with that, let's get into it. So A is for anonymity, and this is a pretty core principle of Bitcoin, and that has to do with the whole fact that your public address, while it's public and everyone can see it, it's not actually tied to your identity in any way. So that generates anonymity in your transactions. B is for blockchain. Bet you didn't see that one coming, but basically, in order for a piece of information to be added to the blockchain, it has to be verified. And so, therefore, you have security in knowing that every block before it has also been verified. And so you end up having this ledger, this like history of all the transactions that is indeed verified and is like a true representation of what's happened. C is for confirmations, which goes back to the blockchain thing, and in order to verify, it's called confirmed. And so once the block is confirmed, then it's added to the blockchain. And these confirmations happen through the mining process. D is for decentralized, which is the idea that there are nodes running from everywhere, basically, and there is no one central point of access. So that means if you take out one node, it's like a spider's web. If you take out one of those little crosswires of the web, the whole web isn't going to lose its structural integrity and fall apart. You've still got the majority of the web and it'll be all right. So that's the idea with the whole decentralized thing. You can pluck off one of the nodes, you can pluck off a miner or a node, but the system will continue to run properly. E is for encryption. And so that's the whole prospect of making sure that your data is secure. And so an example of this is with your wallet. So when you're converting your private address, like your wallet address, to a public address that you can send to people, it goes through a double elliptical curve. And so basically an ellipse, it's continuous. And so there are 2 points for every point. So you can go from point A to point B. You can go from your private wallet to a public wallet quite easily. You just have to follow the math. But in order to go from point B to point A, it's relatively impossible to get back there. So it's encrypted. F is for fungible. And so fungible in terms of Bitcoin means that if I have one Bitcoin and you have one Bitcoin, if we trade the two Bitcoin, if I purchase the Bitcoin from you and sell the one that I have, we both have the same thing. It's still the same good. There is no difference in those two Bitcoin. G is for Genesis block. And that was the first block ever mined on the Bitcoin blockchain. That's the first block that you see. If you were to go and trace the blockchain all the way to the top, that's what you would find there. I actually have a Genesis block sweatshirt. I did not pull it out for this video, but that would have been a good idea. H is for hardware wallet, which is a type of wallet that holds your keys, and it's a form of cold storage, which means it's not connected to the internet. So it's a relatively secure way of holding your keys. J is for Java Bitcoin library. Now this was kind of a difficult one to figure out, but basically one of the ways that you can encrypt your own wallet and you can have your own wallet and store your own keys is through a Java Bitcoin library. So it's just one of the forms that you can use and utilize in order to store your keys. Funnily enough, K is for keys. And so a key is basically just a random string of digits that you keep private because it acts as a signature in order to authorize transactions of Bitcoin from your wallet or from your ownership to another person. L is for Lightning Network. And so the Lightning Network is kind of an offshoot of Bitcoin, but it is not a fork of any sorts. And so basically the Lightning Network is meant for smaller, faster transactions, hence the name, but it doesn't, not every transaction is authorized on the blockchain. Not every transaction is confirmed. It only reaches out and it only confers with the blockchain and needs approval every so often or if there's a dispute. But most of the transactions happen off-chain. N is for nodes. And while there are different types of nodes, including mining nodes, when we're talking about just plain regular nodes, most of the time we're referring to something which contains the entire transactional history of Bitcoin. It's a complete copy of the blockchain, so it has every single transaction. O is for orphan pools. So when a transaction is verified, it is added to the transaction pool. However, if you're receiving a transaction for a portion of Bitcoin or a certain key where one of the transactions above it has not been verified, it goes to a separate pool called the orphan pool, where it kind of awaits its fate. And if you end up verifying the parent node, it's removed from the orphan pool and goes into the regular transaction pool. P is for peer-to-peer network. And so this is really the network that is what allows us to have the decentralization that I talked about. And so it's the idea that each node is just as important in accounting for the whole. Like in the community of nodes, there are no special nodes. There is no home base where most of the information is stored. They are all weighed equally. Q, another tricky one, is for QR wallet. And so this is a type of paper wallet where instead of just writing down the numbers for your private key, you actually have a QR code that holds that information. Or on the other hand, you could have it where it holds your public keys and your public address so that it's a quicker way to make sure that someone has your information if they want to send something to you. And so instead of having to write down the letters and the numbers, you can just scan the QR code and you have the information. R is for reward, and that's what you get when you solve the proof of work algorithm. And the reward is subject to a halvening every 4 years, and so the block reward, the size of the reward, changes by half every 4 years, and that's to kind of create a logarithmic scale so that we don't approach the 21 million cap until a lot later than the inception of Bitcoin. S is for Satoshi Nakamoto. Now this is the anonymous creator of Bitcoin. We don't know if it's a single person or a group of people, but this is the entity that developed Bitcoin and published the white paper all those years ago. T is for transaction, which is what happens anytime you receive or send Bitcoin. And so that's just the movement of the Bitcoin from having custody from one address to another address. U is for unit of account. Now, while this isn't as prevalent today, hopefully at one point we will see Bitcoin used as a unit of account. So that would mean that you would see the prices of goods all in Bitcoin rather than US dollars. Currently, like in America at least, the US dollar is the unit of account, but hopefully one day we will see Bitcoin used as a unit of account to compare the value of goods. V is for validation, which is the process that a set of transactions must undergo in order to become a block and appear on the blockchain. And so each node undergoes its own validation of these transactions, and there's a set of criteria that they must kind of like checklist off in order to allow it to enter the blockchain. And so this ensures that every block on the blockchain is truly verified and held accountable. W is for white paper, and this was the original publication by Satoshi Nakamoto that set out why there is a problem with our current monetary system, what Bitcoin is going to do in order to solve this problem, and how the actual inner workings and the mathematical processes that it's going to use in order to solve this. And so if you haven't read it, I highly recommend you do. It's not very long at all, but it's really dense, and for me at least, it helped click a lot of things together and made the whole picture make a lot more sense. X is for XBT, which is not an altcoin. It's actually just a different ticker symbol that some countries use for Bitcoin instead of BTC. There's not too much crazy stuff to say there. If you type XBT into Google, you just get the Bitcoin chart. Y is for Yap Island, which is home of the Raystones. And so if you think this is coming a little bit left field, you'd be right. I could not find much about the letter Y. However, in the Bitcoin standard, the author basically compares this Raystone economic system to Bitcoin and says that it's the closest approximation we have to a monetary system that resembles what Bitcoin is trying to achieve, and why it was a very smart system that worked really well until the white colonizers inflated the supply of stones. And last but not least, Z is for zigzagging charts. Yup, another one where we really had to dig deep to find something, but when you look at a chart, you definitely see some zigzags. It goes up and down. We've got red and green candles, the works. And so that concludes the ABCs of Bitcoin. I hope you guys enjoyed it and laughed along at some of the ones that were a little bit strange and maybe not quite what you expected, and maybe you learned something new along the way. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see you next week. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and follow me on Twitter at MissQueenCrypto. But thank you so much for watching. Bye!